Welcome back, guys. Lesson 3. We're going to continue talking about the empires of Egypt and the different large time periods they went through from the Old Kingdom to the Middle Kingdom and then into the New Kingdom. So the Old Kingdom obviously was first. It was the oldest, and it's probably the one you're most familiar with, the things they left behind. The giant pyramids, the Sphinx that you see there in the picture, the pharaohs of the Old Kingdom, and not just the pharaohs, many of the important people of Egypt at the time were buried in these large tombs. That's all they are, really, is a very, very large tomb. Later kingdoms will stop building pyramids. They'll still bury their pharaohs in very elaborate tombs, but the idea of a pyramid will kind of go away. Make sure you pay attention to the Old Kingdom on the map there. You can see that it stretched quite a distance north to south along the Nile River, but east to west, it's a very, very small kingdom. It only is on either side because once you go too far away from the river, it's desert. It's land that nobody would ever want to live in. All right. And then you can see the Middle Kingdom also in your packet. The Middle Kingdom is very similar in size to the Old Kingdom. You'll see that it just stretches further south into a kingdom we call Nubia that we'll talk about more in the last lesson. And then finally, the New Kingdom that we'll talk about later as well. You can see that it still occupies the area around the Nile River, but then stretches up into the Sinai Peninsula and then up into what we would call the Middle East now, and Israel and parts of Syria and Lebanon and places like that. So it's an ever-shifting kingdom.
All right, I'm going to spend a little time talking about the Middle Kingdom. As Mr. Cofield was saying about the maps, you can see that there's some expansion here going on. The Egyptians are expanding their territory a little bit east and west. Not too much farther east and west, though. As he said, you're going to end up in the desert. More of the focus is going south into Nubia. All right, 2050 BC, a powerful pharaoh named Mentuhotep. I always mess these up. Mentuhotep, and that's probably even debatable, but Mentuhotep II united Egypt and started a peaceful rule. This began the Middle Kingdom, a period of order and stability that lasted until, every time you see that C, guys, it's circa 1750 BC. We may not know an exact time, an exact date, but roughly about 300 years. We're saying the Middle Kingdom lasted, that peace and stability lasted for about 300 years, 2050 BC to 1750 BC. And we see expansion, not just expansion in territory. We see expansion in trade, expansion of roads that are connecting, obviously, all of the territory in ancient Egypt and the kingdom. We're seeing an expansion of economic activity, an expansion of, and obviously as you expand trade, you're going to expand economic activity as well. The economy is thriving. Goods are moving back and forth, up and down the Nile River. Many people are seeing more success in this kingdom than ever before. The one thing we do want to make sure you realize is that at this point, though, pharaohs are no longer building pyramids. Pharaohs are still creating tombs, but we're just not seeing those huge, massive pyramid structures anymore. All right? There's lots of other ways you can build tombs. A lot of times you're seeing underground complexes, almost like a vault, that you're seeing pharaohs being laid to rest, but no longer these huge, massive pyramids. This picture just shows an example of a road. You can see it's very well constructed, nice and flat, and even on each side, it has like a boundary on each side of the road. Very quality construction during the Middle Kingdom. All right, but nothing lasts forever. The Middle Kingdom will eventually decline. It's eventually going to collapse. So this slide will talk a little bit about that. At the end of the Middle Kingdom, the pharaohs could not keep the kingdom together. It's just sort of natural. As something enlarges and expands, it's harder to keep it together. This is the difference between, is it easier to control a class of 10 kids or 40 kids? The larger it gets, the harder it is to keep control. No different for a teacher than it would be for a pharaoh. And as the Middle Kingdom is expanding, this is leading to more contact with outside groups. We're seeing military invasions, hostility with some of these outside groups. One particularly from Southwest Asia called the Hyksos or Hyksos. Trying to remember the video we watched today and how they said it. All right, remind me again. Hyksos. I did say it right then. Called the Hyksos. And they are coming from Southwest Asia. Think of the Fertile Crescent region. Think of that region where the Assyrians came from. All right, this is sort of that same area that this group is coming from also. Think of them as ancestors or relatives of the Assyrians. And they're using all that technology that we talked about back in ancient Mesopotamia. You're seeing chariots. You're seeing improved weaponry. This stuff just didn't go away, right? After Sargon, after Hammurabi, it's not like all that technology faded. It kept improving and passing on to different groups. And this is going to be instrumental in their invasion of Egypt. So just on the bottom again, going through those points, they come from Western Asia, rode in chariots, and fought with sturdy weapons. All right, that's the end of my time. We're going to pass it off now. After we look at two more. Oh, I forgot. I got one more slide. I was getting ahead of myself. Or I got one more point to make. Around 1550 BC, so after the Middle Kingdom has fallen to the Hyksos, we're going to see Egypt take back control. Around 1550 BC, an Egyptian prince named Ahmose formed an army and drove the Hyksos out of Egypt. So just when it looked like Egypt was on the rocks and they were gone for good, they make a resurgence in 1550 BC. Now I'm done.
Okay. So now we want to talk about the New Kingdom there. Mr. Miller covered all that for you leading up to the New Kingdom and what's going on. So here we go. There are two pharaohs that we really want to focus in on, but let's just talk about how it got started first. So from like 1500, and remember, you don't have to memorize dates. From about 1550 to 1070 BC is going to be this time period. And it's going to begin with Pharaoh Ahmose. The period in which Egypt reaches its power and glory is at the height, the best it's ever been, and then it starts its decline. But it's during this period, the New Kingdom, that it reaches its height. And we call that its golden age, okay? So that's a word you're going to want to remember, golden age. How about you write that in? Just take a moment, write golden age right there. And Ahmose creates a strong military, and he starts to expand trade. And so trade is very important because the trade's going to bring money in to do all the things that we remember Egypt for and what we think of as typically Egyptian accomplishments, the pyramids, the jewelry, the gold, and all those things. So we need the money to do those things. So the first pharaoh we want to talk about after Ahmose is Hatshepsut. Now she is the first female pharaoh as well. And so if you will do this for me, I want you to circle where it says she in the middle of her name. See, Hatshepsut, and the word she is in the middle. So I want you to circle that in both places, Hatshepsut and Hatshepsut. There's two spots there. She's the first female pharaoh, and she works to increase trade, and she expands trade exponentially. So we really want some dollar signs around her. So where she's working to increase trade, we really need some dollar signs there. And let's see if I can make this pencil work. Sometimes it works. And sometimes, I think it's telling me my pen function is not available. But that's okay, because I will use the highlighter function. So we want to highlight she and circle she. And then we definitely want some dollar signs written in right here. And because she is going to create an environment where they trade all over the Mediterranean and with the Hyksos back toward Asia. And she trades all along the coast of Africa in the Mediterranean Sea. Makes lots of money. So she is known for being a not trader, but trader, as in able to trade a lot of goods back and forth. So one thing I like to remind kiddos, and a way just to remember that, is that women typically like to shop. I know my sisters and I can shop forever. So one of the things, shopping is just like trading. I trade my money for some goods. So remember that Hatshepsut, the girl, she likes to trade, and she makes Egypt very, very wealthy. The money then is used by Ramses. He follows along. He actually has the longest reign of any pharaoh in Egyptian history. He reigns for 66 years. So, but Ramses the Great, and we talk about whether people deserve the title of the great or not, and he does. He is a great warrior and builder, and built many, many famous temples that you see all the time that we will look at in class, more pictures of that. And he is known for being the great warrior and builder. So I definitely want you highlighting something about that. We definitely want to talk about him being able to build things and build great temples. Maybe you can draw you a little picture of a temple there, because we definitely want to keep that in mind, that he built these things. And then he started a very long war that went on for a long time with the Hittites. Back and forth. One would win, the other one would win, and they just went back and forth over land borders. Until finally, Ramses said, enough is enough. And he called a truce, and they made a treaty. And they said, you know what, let's just quit fighting and let's just make each other rich. So then he began trading just like Hatshepsut did, putting the money back into the system, back into their government that he had spent on his warriors and his buildings. So he was able to leave Egypt well off again and doing very well. So that is our two good people that we need to know the most. Now, I can guarantee you these guys are going to be on the test, both of them, and that you need to know that she expanded Egypt through trade, and he expanded Egypt through warfare as a warrior, and then he became a great builder. All right, so that is it. Now we are ready for Miss Tickle.
Okay, so Egypt survived many invasions, but eventually lost its power forever to other powers such as the Greeks and Romans. So now we're into your hot question. How do the phrases, united we stand, divided we fall, and your enemies are always watching, apply to the rulers of ancient Egypt? I want you guys to think about that. Go back and listen to what Mr. Miller told you, listen to what Miss Hodges told you. When you're with your group of friends and you're all together, you guys are happy, you're having a good time, you feel very strong. But when you guys start to maybe split apart, you start fighting, you're maybe pulling away from each other, you might start to see other people want to become friends with your friends that you're fighting with. So when you're together, you're strong. When you start to separate, things may start to fall. It's the same with the United States. If we're all getting along, the country's united, we're very strong, no one wants to attack us or do harm to us. But if the states start to fight and things start to crumple and there's lots of issues, there could be outside enemies that look to attack. So think about united we stand, divided we fall, and your enemies are always watching. These are two very important questions. This will not be the only time that you see them. You will see them again throughout the whole year. It's one of those kind of underlying themes like cultural diffusion is. So you want to apply the hot question rules. It needs to be 3 sentences. Restate the prompt. Do not say I think, he thinks, she thinks, we think. Okay, restate the prompt and incorporate your vocabulary because you do have some vocab to incorporate. So look back at your word wall, see what you need to add to it. And we are very excited to read what you guys have concluded with united we stand, divided we fall, and your enemies are always watching. See you in class. Bye. Do you want to keep the ink annotation?
Yeah.
Yeah.